Alright, I don't know how many of you will find this interesting, but I just picked up a new copy of the New King James large print ultra slim reference Bible, and this is my newest edition that I have, but it's actually an older Nelson Bible. So as many of you know, Nelson has just put out a classic verse-by-verse center column reference. So the similarity really between these two is that they're both put out by Thomas Nelson, and they're both a classic center column reference, and so they both say classic, and they also have a verse-by-verse format. And I thought it would be really interesting to first of all compare a newer Thomas Nelson verse-by-verse center column with an older one, and then also to compare this older one by Nelson with the Holman large print ultra thin reference Bible, and just so you could see how Nelson has updated theirs, but also how it compares to the Holman edition that you can get. So this one here is out of print, but you can still get the Holman readily available at cbd.com. So this Holman is in the British tan leather touch. The older Nelson is in a navy leather soft, and the newer Nelson that I have here is a brown leather soft. So what's interesting is you're going to see a lot of similarities. Two of these are thin line Bibles, but they're all synthetic covers. And so as far as price points, it's interesting. This one retails for $60 right now. That's the retail price on the box. The retail price for this one said $40, but it is a thumb indexed edition. So you could probably subtract some from that $40 if it wasn't a thumb indexed edition. And then the Holman retails for $30. So there are a lot of similarities. They're all in the New King James Version. They're all verse-by-verse center column format. The newest one here, and you can tell it's new, I'll show you when it was designed. According to the copyright page here, it says 2019. So the copyright is 2019 by Thomas Nelson. And so this is their newest format. And other reviews have shown this Bible. I've also done a review on it. Has a great look to it. Very elaborate looking. Kind of a nice old school spine there. Looks really elegant. So that's what Thomas Nelson is presently putting out. This is not a thin line though. It actually, as you can see, it's the same footprint as these other Bibles. They're about, I think it was 9.5 by 6.5. But these two are only an inch thick. So they're thin lines, and this is 1.5 inches. So we'll look at, really what the difference is and what you're getting for that extra 1/2 inch. So this one here is an older Thomas Nelson. Again, this is the newest edition that I have. So this is a 2010 design by Thomas Nelson, as you can see here. So that's now, as of this recording, about 10 years old, the design that you're seeing here. Holman, interestingly, you can still get these. This one, like I said, is out of print, but these ones you can still get, and according to the copyright page, you're looking at a 1996 copyright. So from what I can tell, the design on this one is 1996. Pretty old, whereas the design on this was 2010, and then this one is 2019. So you're really looking here at kind of like a historical look at the different editions of the New King James. So let's look at the inside of these and see how they compare. So this is the newest one, and what you find with this is that this comfort print is nice and large, and really what you're getting for a little bit thicker Bible is the same opacity as what you're seeing in these. I think that it's really similar. There's not a lot of show through on any of these Bibles, which is great, but you're getting a little bit bigger print with this. And so that is why I think it takes up more space. But really, they're very similar in terms of the overall formatting, because the King James just continues to have certain features. It's poetic setting in the poetry sections, but the paragraph sections are done in verse by verse. And whenever you have a new paragraph, a lot of times you will have section headings, but you'll also see at times where they will have a bold verse number. I think that's one there where they're showing a new paragraph. Now in this newest edition, they do the verses in red, and that's nice, kind of makes them stand out a little bit, although it's a little harder to see sometimes where they're bold in this particular edition, where the verse numbers are bold. In this one, I can tell where the verse numbers are bold pretty easily. We've got one here, verse 25, that's clearly bolder than the other ones. So this font, I think, looks really nice and clean. Is it better? Is the older Nelson better than the new one? No, I wouldn't say so. I would say they're actually really comparable, and it's really just a matter of preference. But the comfort print is a little larger, maybe a little easier to read. But this has a little bit more of a, I guess, an old school look to it, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily better. It has a nice clean look to it though. The Holman, again, this is an older design. I would say doesn't have as clean of a look, but there's a lot of similarities here. And you can again tell where the verses have bold numbers to designate new paragraphs. But this doesn't have as clean of a look as the older Nelson does, and as the new Nelson as well. I just feel like this font is, it just, again, it's designed longer ago, and it was printed probably originally longer ago. So one thing that is nice about it is it's nice and dark and kind of a bold font, whereas this one not so much. The other thing I noticed with this one that's not quite as aesthetically pleasing is in, for example, certain places you can really tell that the justification on the lines is spaced out a lot. But when you compare that to this one, the Nelson, you don't get that nearly as much. Yeah, it is spaced out, the words are spaced out, but not the letters. So I think that aesthetically this has a nicer look to it. But the print in this is lighter, and so in some lighting this might actually be harder to read, whereas in dimmer lighting this might actually be easier to read. On the other hand, reading for long periods of time, this might actually be easier on the eyes than the Holman. But really you're looking at very similar Bibles. They really have the same features with the concordance and the maps. They all have that. So that's a look at the newer NKJV, the newest edition, verse by Thomas Nelson, versus an older one, versus the Holman large print, ultra thin. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's being put out in the NKJV and what you particularly enjoy reading. Thank you so much for watching this review from a Frisch Perspective.